So we have two more talks today, one on online teaching of computer-based courses, and we end today with a talk on remote assessment, something I'm sure we've all been grappling with over the last few months. So kicking off this part is Eirini Koutoumanou. I hope I've pronounced that correctly, Eirini, from University College London Institute of Child Health. And she's going to take us through experiences of converting computer labs online. Over to you, Eirini.
Thank you very much, Eleanor. And yes, you did pronounce that right. I know it's a tongue twister for a lot of people. So hi, everyone. I'm here representing CASC, the Centre for Applied Statistics courses. We are a team of statisticians running primarily short courses, but other things as well. I will sort of say a few things about them shortly. So as Eleanor said, I'll be focusing today on what we've learned from our recent experience of online teaching of computer-based statistics courses. A lot of the things I'll say have already been mentioned and discussed, especially from the morning sessions, Mina's and Maria's sessions, where you had some of the tips and the advice on how to make things interactive, how to engage students. But we're coming from a perspective where our students are not returned. We don't have a continuing relationship with them. These are short courses where people come in the morning and leave in late afternoon. So it's a slight sort of difference, I guess, in the relationship we built with them. So I'll say a few things, as I said, about the team. And then I'll talk a little bit about pre-COVID and what's happened after COVID, simply because that's exactly what differentiated things for us, I guess, for most of us here. And the challenges that we faced both before and after, the solutions that we've come up with, and by no means they are definitive, but there are some. What we've learned and where we're going next. What you see there on the picture is the team, except the lady at the front on the left, Sharon. She was our administrator, but she's now gone. So you see myself there, Angie, some of you again might know her. Angie Waits is our founder and co-director with myself, and the staff at the back are sort of the remaining teaching staff, Dean Langen, Joe Lewis, and Chibweze Okponaya. Some of them might be here today, actually, so hi, if you're here. Hi, team. So what is CASC? So CASC, the Centre for Applied Statistics courses, was set up about a decade ago, just over a decade ago. And we sort of saw a demand in the market for short statistics courses. We saw a lot of people coming with the same questions at our consultancy meetings that we had available for our colleagues within the Institute of Child Health. So this is a UCL department, very closely aligned and working with the Great Ormond Street Hospital that some of you again might be aware of. So we got to that point where we saw a lot of people coming with the same questions. This was especially Angie's sort of motivation, and thinking, why don't we run some short courses to answer those questions all at once at the same time to 20 people as opposed to one at a time. That was the motivation, and we've kind of taken that, and it's grown a lot since then. So as I said, over a decade of working. We currently have 5 teaching staff, all have some statistical background. Maybe most of us really have studied statistics, but in the past we had psychologists that they had the statistic interest that have worked for us as well. And an administrator. We run a lot of short statistics courses. We currently have 18 different topics, and we run courses on each of those multiple times a year. So each of those courses might be repeated 3 or 4 or 5 times a year, and they vary in terms of the duration. Some are just a single day courses, like 10 till 4, and some last the whole week or evening. So we might be meeting a group during 10 evenings across 10 weeks or 5 weeks if we do 2 evenings per week. But we also teach the core statistics module for the Institute of Child Health IBSc program as well as MSc program. So a lot of the things, as I said, that have been mentioned so far, and the things I'll also talk about, we will also come to use them with our taught students, if you like, the students that are going to be getting a degree out of their journey at UCL. But our main audience for the short courses, the target audience, is basically anyone, you know, students coming from within our institution, but also others, mature professionals or young professionals, colleagues from the institute, but also colleagues from wider UCL. The biggest difference there is that most of these people are looking for us, are looking for short courses. They come with quite a lot of motivation. We've realized that throughout the years, and they come wanting to know about the topic that we're teaching. And that sort of sets us, it works a lot in our favor, I have to admit, just simply because you are sitting in front of an audience that has not been imposed to them. This is not part of a program of an MSc or an IBSc where maybe their interest might lie more on other things that are being taught. But mostly we'll also have to pay some sort of fee, which again, not a lot of them pay from their own pockets, but in fact their institutions or organizations actually pay for their attendance. And what you see there on the picture is just some of the screenshots of the things we might be teaching them: meta-analysis, logistic regression, linear regression, other things as well. So what would normally happen, especially before mid-March 2020, we will be in the building that you see on the picture. That's where our offices are sort of physically located at the Institute of Child Health. We could be running classes anything between 15 to 40 participants, sort of averages go really between 15 to 35. And we'll be in the classroom with them from 10 o'clock to 4:35, solely teaching hours. The rest will be our breaks. And we'll have, we've again, through experience, we figured out that having at least 2 teaching staff in the classroom was really working really well. We'd have the lead person sort of showing, demonstrating, doing the talking, and then we'd have at least another person really trying to pick up the gaps and the holes and those that are a little left behind, or those that want something a little bit faster, where at the breaks or during practical exercises, we'd find the second person will find themselves chatting to those that are a little bit slower or are a bit faster, trying to really meet the learning objectives for every single one of our participants. Of course, not achievable 100% of the time. Probably, you know, I don't know what percentage of that would be, but it's us trying. So we're trying, having 2 staff in the classroom was really trying to meet our objective. We'd have things like your typical refreshments, lunch provided, would be giving materials to them printed out, as you saw in that sort of picture of that folder. And when it came to computer classes, things were pretty much the same. The main things we're teaching to them in terms of statistical software are the things that you see on the screen: R/RStudio, Stata, SPSS. SPSS particularly to our taught students, our MScs and BScs, because that's the program specifically supported by UCL. But that's also changing slowly. And the biggest difference with computer classes was that we needed more staff, because we had a class of 20, we had a class with 20 computers / laptops. Some people would decide to bring their own laptops or use the UCL provided computers. And what we find, of course, is that a lot of people have their individual problems. You need to go to them. And by the time you do that, someone else is falling behind. So we had at least, I say 2 on the slide for the smaller classes, but 3 was the most common number of teaching staff that we would need in a computer class. And along with the folder, we will be giving them all sort of other relevant files in USB. So trying to really minimize any incompatibilities, any issues. Oh, I forgot to download the data. I didn't get the, you know, sort of your email about where to get the data from. So trying to minimize all those technical, if you like, hitches and having everything ready for them at 10 a.m. So what were the challenges pre-COVID? Of course, having to organize all our catering orders and printing orders and getting all those things ready for the right amount of people, and minimizing wastage, if you like, printing wastage or simply monetary wastage in terms of ordering too much catering and so on. But really the biggest thing was availability of rooms and the room sizes. UCL is in the center of London, Bloomsbury, Russell Square. Throughout the years, all you hear about is how much of a big problem we have in terms of capacity in classrooms. and how there aren't enough rooms for all of us. So we found ourselves a lot of the time being limited to about 20 computers in a class, which isn't really a large number, especially for computer classes. They tend to be very popular. We tend to have long waiting lists, but we have really been limited, capped to that number 20. And we've been a little bit flexible as well. We never really wanted to get to that 20 because of you might have 2 computers down, and then you don't want to have people not really having a PC to work on. Other challenges were delays, people coming in late, even ourselves, if something happened, the teaching staff or our participants coming in and sort of having delays from that front. The laptops not working, or persons forgotten the charger, we're out, we have no more PCs, they're out of laptop. What do? Your typical day to day and quite, sometimes totally unplanned or nothing you can do about type of challenges. But we had got to the point, having done this now for so long, that we had it we fairly much had it all under control. We'd have a spare 1 or 2 spare laptops with us. We'd make sure we'd be checking the rooms beforehand, and of course ensuring as much as we can that we tell everyone, we give exact maps, tell them where the course is running, what time you're expected to be sat and ready to go, and what you need to download beforehand. Okay, so mid-March, we find ourselves not being able to do this anymore in the classrooms, not meeting people actually physically, but we thought we can do this online. It was a steep learning curve, starting from what kind of platforms to use, how do we do it, what are the timings, and that's where sort of the main challenges came after. But having come now towards the end of the academic year, I can tell you that what we've done, and of course how we came to this point, having solved some of our challenges. So we stuck to the same number of courses. So whatever we had planned for the summer, we actually did. And to our surprise, very pleasant surprise, we actually ended up with very similar numbers of participants. People seemed, especially kind of post-Easter, so after the Easter break, people seem to be really as interested as before, similar numbers. And we kind of, again, stuck to the material in terms of, the folders that we had ready, the notes that we had for them, but we were just doing it all online. And we made sure our practical exercises remained as they were before. And one of the challenges there was really to get people to do those exercises, which, as I'll say in a little bit, we achieved that with breakout groups. So online started, life online started for CASC, and we of course explored the options provided by our department, UCL, and we went for MS Teams, Microsoft Teams, which has worked brilliantly for us, with some, of course, I say brilliantly, but nothing is perfect, is there? So it's worked well, and we kind of stuck with that, and we're quite familiar with the platform now. So what were the challenges right from the start? And this has been covered already. It was the distance, the feel of distance. We were literally just talking to our screens, like I'm doing now. I'm talking to my screen, and essentially convincing myself that there was 20 other people on their own screens listening to me and trying to engage was really the challenge at the start. Is there really anyone there? You're kind of asking, is everyone okay? Are you guys listening? And there's no response. You really feel quite alone and lonely. So that was absolutely the biggest challenge, I think, at the start, getting people to then engage, to answer those questions, and really even simply give us a thumbs up. Yes, I can hear you. And of course, then get involved more with the content of the course. And then specifically for our computer classes was sorting out the software. Were people ready to go right from the start? Had they downloaded the software? Did they have all the data sets in place? Was all of that okay? And as I said, sorted prior to the course commencing. And what we found pretty early, and this was when we did our first introduction to our course online, where we stuck to our original timing, 10 till 4:30. It got to 4:30 on the first online R course, and we had just got to the middle part of our course. We hadn't even gone past where we would normally be at lunchtime. So immediately time from that first online experience was an issue for us. And why was that? Simply because it was taking us longer to answer people's questions. So once we got people talking and sort of kept asking, kept pausing, kept giving them time to pose questions, we're thinking, well, we had a lot of the time to rephrase the questions, saying, is that really what you mean? A lot of the questions came from the chat. So sometimes the way people would express themselves wasn't necessarily fully clear, or we wanted to repeat the question to make sure we got exactly the gist of it. So first it was that, so more time dedicated to answering questions, but also technical problems, an individual sort of staying, lacking a little bit behind with some of the things I've said, and that 5 minutes later, they find themselves quite further behind from where I was. So it was individual problems, sort of, where normally in the classroom, they would have put their hand up, one of the teaching staff would have gone to them, and they had sort of fairly quickly maybe sorted a simple missing comma or missing bracket in R, or the drop-down sort of journey in SPSS. But also other sort of, previously unknown issues to us. And Microsoft Teams didn't seem to be very consistent as to whether it's allowing guests, non-UCL members, to take part in the chat. Some non-UCL members couldn't raise the hand, use the raise hand function. So things that we learned along the way and sort of had to figure out, and of course, sort of using time, but also had to figure out how to deal with them. So for example, the not being able to use the chat, it was where we really had to say to people, look, speak up. We will be repeating everything that's appearing on the chat, but we want you to also use your microphone. And immediately us repeating the questions taking longer, then someone unmuting themselves, but you cannot hear them correctly. They have a bit of a muffled sort of voice coming across. We have to repeat that. So exactly where the extra time was taken. So in terms of...
Can I just quickly interject? We're coming up to 4 o'clock. I'm just conscious of time here.
Yeah. I'm on to my solutions, Eleanor, so yes, hopefully not much more. So I've already sort of mentioned some of the solutions, as I said, asking people to really sort of take part in terms of asking questions. But really what we found is being very exact in terms of what we asked them pre-course. Before they joined the course, we had to be very detailed. What do we expect people to do? We had to have readily available staff at any point to share data, to share trial versions of Stata or SPSS and so on. And really breaking the ice early, greet people by name, ask them to briefly introduce themselves in the chat. Where are you based? Where do you currently, where do we find you? What's your physical location? Introduce the team, just now. Show a picture, let everyone sort of introduce themselves with the camera on, and be clear on how the day is set up. But of course, longer hours has been the biggest thing for us, which has meant more tiring. So we find ourselves now planning for 2020 to 2021, our online courses, we're planning to break them to do 2 days, 2 half days, because the experience really and the feedback for our participants has been, this was great, but it was tiring. Looking at the computer, we basically extended 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So these were long days. And really, the breakout groups were great for us. We used breakout groups, as has been said from the morning as well, a lot. We tried to put cameras on, encourage people to really talk and ask questions, a lot of questions at the breakout groups. So a basic sort of lessons learned, and I'll close, I think, with the next slide as well, is try to avoid panic. When we said we're not going to allow ourselves panic sort of in these online classes, because they were all live synchronous classes. So really trying to help each other. So all the team had to step in. This is something we didn't have to do before. When a couple of people were teaching, the others were in the office. But now all of us were in this virtual classroom, and really interacting by asking students again and again, giving them enough time to voice any confusion. And I'll close with the positive note. Comments were great. The feedback was consistent to pre-COVID conditions. People were saying this was better or just as good as a face-to-face class, or we wouldn't have been able to join a class if it was done physically in UCL because of childcare costs and travel costs and so on. So we're taking that forward. We're taking it to the next academic year, giving ourselves a bit more time. Basically, that's the main output going forward for us. So I'll stop there if that's okay. Sorry for overrunning.
That's okay. Thank you very, very much for a very interesting talk, and good to see how you managed the transition to online there, Eirini. It is now 4 o'clock. I know you've got there are some questions for you in the Q&A, but in the interest of time and keeping to schedule, I wonder whether you'd be happy to answer those over the next few minutes, if that's
definitely
okay.
Yeah, absolutely, will do.
That's great. Thank you very much.